It's another Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman. For this special NBA trade deadline version of Thunder Thursday, joining me is Thunder beat writer Anthony Slater, columnist Jenny Carlson, soon to be joining us from his black hole, columnist Barry Tramo, and we're hoping that Darnell Mayberry will be joining us soon. For now, let's start with Anthony Slater. Anthony, what just happened?
Well, I mean, we're still sorting everything out. It seems Reggie Jackson's on the way to Detroit. Kendrick Perkins is on the way to Utah. And it sounds like he's going to be bought out by Utah. And then the Thunder are getting Enes Kanter, who's a young center from the Jazz. Kyle Singler, who's like a nice little wing compliment from the Pistons. And then DJ Augustine, who will now be the backup point guard from the Pistons. But that puts the Thunder roster at 16, which means there's got to be at least one more person going somewhere. Does that make a sense?
Anthony, yeah, it does. Can you give us any insight on who that might be?
I'm assuming it's going to – you'd have to guess it'll be either Jeremy Lamb, Perry Jones, as a piece. I'd almost honestly guess Lamb. Or maybe, Ish Smith or Trent Jarrett. I would assume it's not any of the other, rotation-type players. So I would just guess one of those four. But, I don't know at this point. There's so many moving parts right now. This trade deadline in the last hour just went crazy.
Barry Trammell's joining us, guys. Barry, what's your take on what's happened?
Well, I think the Thunder cut off its nose to spite its face. It got rid of a guy it didn't want, and it included a guy that it needed. And some of it's mathematics. The Thunder traded two valuable rotation players. Reggie, for all his warts in attitude, was still a valuable player, the backup point guard, and a needed guy off the bench. Traded Perk and all his defense and his locker room presence, and got back one good player. So that's a minus. I just don't. I don't like it. Maybe it works out, but I don't like
it. Joining us now, Jenny Carlson. Jenny, I think she's ready. Let's go to you, Anthony. Oh, I'm sorry, Jenny. So, as Barry says, the Thunder got one good player. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting continuation of a we've seen in that they continue to load up on one-way players. I mean, we're just not seeing guys who, it seems like to me, can be both offensive and defensive minded, and you give up, we were talking about this a little bit ago, you give up your tough guy. You give up as Barry said, your nose guard. I mean, the Patriots aren't going to trade away Vince Wilfork, but the Thunder went ahead and said goodbye to Kendrick Perkins. I think this was, it's interesting. I think a lot of us expected Kendrick trade deadline this year, but after the way he's played this year, it's even more difficult to see him go. I think there are a lot of us who were already in the camp that saw the value that Kendrick Perkins brought, but now the way he's played this year, I think there's even more people that see that value. But now you're bringing in, Kyle Stingler, a guy that is not exactly known for defense. DJ Augustine, not for defense. And Enes Kanter, I mean, I guess maybe he's a guy who might somebody in the middle, but not like Kendrick Perkins. I mean, if down the road somewhere, I think Perk's going to probably put Kanter in a headlock and walk him off the court. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who exactly plays defense on this team.
Coming, the headline off of this trade is, what are they going to do without Perk? Or is that just the collective of this group, which probably leans more to appreciation of Kendrick Perkins than the average Thunder observer and fan?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole, but I mean, one thing, I don't think we can judge this trade yet because I don't think we all are aware. I mean, Kanter, I think, is a very good young player, has a chance to be 23-year-old. He's kind of like Reggie Jackson, has kind of had some issues in Utah. Kyle Singler, he's a solid player, nice little shooter. And then DJ Augustine, is kind of maybe more what the Thunder wanted as in a backup point guard, which is more run the team type player. So I think we just need to let everything sort itself out, watch how this team gels over the next month. I agree that Kendrick Perkins leaves a hole, but Kanter is a far better offensive player. It's similar to what they were going to maybe do with the Lopez trade. We'll see. I can't do this trade right now, and I don't want to for at least a month.
Listen, guys, I think the thing that we have to remember is this: any talk about defensive disposition for the Thunder, that's out the window, because the guys that they're acquiring, I mean, obviously we all know Reggie Jackson struggled to stay in front of a post, but
True.
They're trading away their best defender in the post for questionable guys on defensive end, questionable to non-existent on the defensive end. So anybody that wants to talk about defensive disposition this is not the place to talk about that.
Barry, I'm going to throw this question to everybody on the panel. Ed, would you rather see the Thunder make the Brook Lopez deal?
If you mean if it's the same guys going and coming otherwise?
Yeah.
Not really, because I think Kanter costs a lot less and is a very solid offensive player. He's averaged 12 and 13 points the last 2 years. So not necessarily $16 million is a lot to pay for a center that can't play defense. So I wouldn't have been crazy. I wasn't crazy about the prospects of a Brook Lopez trade. So no, I was hoping for a dynamic player or a really good wing all-around player. So I thought that was the Thunder's biggest need, and I think I think what we might be seeing, we might need just of what they would call a distraction, what a lot of us would answer, that Reggie Jackson in their eyes. He's a productive player, and they needed somebody like that for almost nothing, because when you trade for Kanter and Perk, you're trading defense for offense. So in some ways that's a wash, and with no guarantee that Kanter will be around in the future. So if Kanter stays, be a really player, then this trade could work out long term. I see no way it works out short term.
I think you guys may be underrating some of the pieces they got in it.
How so?
I like DJ Augustine as a player. I really do think he'll fit as the point guard, the run-in offense type of guy that they haven't really had with Waiters, with Jackson. I think Singler could help on the wing as like a two-way wing player. He's not great offensively, he's not great defensively, but he's decent both ways, which they haven't had. And then I think Kanter, wait and see, but he has some offensive talent. I just think they
and
may
he just
have
does
shored up
certainly
some
can
holes.
impress.
What's up?
This continues Sam Presti's love of two-way players. I mean, I'm not two brand name players in that in this case he gets Kentucky, he gets Texas, and let's see, Singler he gets Duke. So he's filling out his Sweet 16 with powerhouse programs. Are we underrating the pieces that the Thunder gets in this deal? I don't think we lost Jenny. How about it, Barry? You concur with Anthony? We're rating the pieces they got back in the deal.
Well, he's going to have to prove that to me. Sorry, I'm not going to get excited about Kyle Singler. We're talking about a guy that's. Let me look. This is a guy that's averaging what? Do you have? I got it right here. Guy that's playing sporadic minutes. 24 minutes a game for Detroit.
It's more than Kendrick Perkins is playing. I mean, we can't look at numbers and everything.
Yeah. But I don't. If Kyle Singler can guard Western Conference playoff caliber players, I'm going to be surprised.
He can guard, I'll tell you right now, you can guard him better than Reggie Jackson. He can guard him better than Dion Waiters.
AC, you can guard him better than Reggie Jackson can guard him.
Well, then that's an upgrade, right?
Maybe, but I don't know. Here's I guess my thing, and maybe this is just an overall lament. I thought the Thunder was a Western Conference contender year in and year out because they were different than the rest of the teams in the Western Conference in terms of, the Warriors are run and gun, the Rockets are run and gun, the Clippers are run and gun. We've seen as those teams have evolved and started to play defense how much better they've gotten, but the thing that always set the Thunder apart in my mind among those young teams was that they played defense, and a lot of that stemmed from Kendrick Perkins and his mindset that just seemed to permeate the rest of those guys out on the court. I just think they're becoming a lot like the rest of the teams in the West. Now, maybe you can outscore them. Maybe you can win 140 to 139. Maybe that's the style of basketball that we're going to be in for. Maybe that's my lament, is that it seems like we've gone from, seeing something that was different and could trump some of those teams to something that's just more like them and trying to be better in just running up the score. So maybe that's the new reality, and I just got to come to terms with it. Maybe that's where my discontent and dislike of some of these moves is coming from.
Is that what just happened? Did the Thunder go back and shift into full gear of racehorse basketball? Barry, did you hear me?
No, I didn't.
Did the Thunder shift into racehorse basketball?
Well, I don't think they'll hit it. They might not even try it. However, that second unit now, if Kanter's on it, if they continue to start Steven Adams, where's defense come from? Waiters, Morrow, DJ Augustin, Mitch McGary. You're talking about a bunch of guys that really don't do much. Maybe the defensive player of the year, Kyle Singler, can change everything, but doesn't look promising to me.
Anthony, how can
Well, I didn't hear you. What's up?
As you see it right now, without Ken Perkins, how can this go in and hope to stop Arkansas, Zach Randolph, and the Memphis Grizzlies?
I think you're going to heavily rely on the growth of Steven Adams, which I don't think it's a terrible thing. If we think about it, Kendrick Perkins was not going to be here next year. It was very unlikely. So you just rely on Steven Adams to continue to show the growth he has on the defensive end. He's been pretty good on that end all year. Serge Ibaka, still a good defender. Collison, still a smart defender. Enes Kanter, while not Kendrick Perkins, he's a body. He can make Gasol and Randolph fight on the other end. But one thing about this trade, the Thunder might have been thinking, especially because this is the rest of this season type trade, they're probably going to play the Warriors in round one anyways. That's what it's very much looking like. And Kendrick Perkins is not going to matter much in a Warriors series. He would definitely matter in a Grizzlies series, but a Warriors series,
That's true.
He's not going to matter.
This probably does help the Thunder survive the Warriors.
Does it help Oklahoma City, though? Anthony ends up bought out by Utah and bought in by his old coach, Doc Rivers, in Los Angeles.
If you think about it, the Clippers are what? They're like the 6 or 7 seed right now. I think they'll probably be the 7 with the Thunder at the 8. Then you don't worry about the Clippers till, you wouldn't play them until the conference finals, which, I like Perk, but I don't necessarily think he's going to take the Clippers to the conference finals. So there's a chance he may do that and help them. But the West is such a gauntlet, you don't really worry about that.
Jenny, Anthony seems to be suggesting that also with Kendrick Perkins gone, that the Thunder inevitably was going to lose him. So let's look into the future a little bit. We're always reading Kevin Durant tea leaves. Does acquiring DJ Augustin, his old running buddy from Austin and the Texas Longhorns, does that do something for keep Kevin in OKC campaign?
It's an interesting move. That was the first thing I thought about, was an old teammate coming back to play with Kevin. I don't know if it keeps him here. I think that we're still, a lot to be determined between now and then in terms of where the team is and some other things. So I don't think that would be the thing. But, if he's close to DJ, and I think there's some evidence that, they've been friends and friendly, it can't hurt. I mean, they hired Kevin's shooting coach and put him on staff, so why not? Surround him by people he likes. It can't hurt to try to keep him here.
Anthony, you talked a lot about Kyle Singler. I sort of agree with Barry. I don't see him being any kind of meaningful contributor. It seems like a 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe 10th guy off the bench.
Well, I mean, 7, 8, 9 is. I mean, I qualify that as meaningful. Like I said, I mean, look, I'm not calling him the defensive player of the year. I'm not calling him a huge pickup. I'm just. Yeah, well, I think that was a shot at me.
Barry's off the hangout. You can say whatever you want to about him now.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, one of the biggest issues this team has had, and we've talked about it, Andre Robertson, great defender, can't play offense. Dion Waiters, Jackson, although Jackson's now gone, Anthony Morrow, offensive players who don't play defense. Kyle Singler, not great on either end, but just like you can have him on the court. You can rely on him to stay in front of his guy, or at least attempt to, and then you can also rely on him to hit a shot. He's a decent 3-point shooter, and he doesn't hurt you on offense. So, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm guessing a month from now, you two will be like, I kind of like Kyle Singler more than I thought I was going to like Kyle Singler. I'm not saying he's going to be a stud. But.
I actually, in terms of when you're talking about a guy who can bring some offense to the second unit in a sort of Reggie Jackson-esque way, I mean, if he's going to stay in front of his man for even, a tenth of the possessions, a quarter of the possessions, I'll feel better about that. Reggie Jackson and his defensive liabilities got under my skin in a way that not a lot has watching the Thunder play since they got here. That was so infuriating because you knew how athletically talented Reggie Jackson was, and to see him have such a deficit on the defensive end, it was crazy how much that just drove me insane. So he can now be somebody else's defensive liability because he has the athleticism to be a much better defender, and he just is not any good on the defensive end.
Yeah, I'll just say this, and I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, and I know Kendrick Perkins is underrated nationally, but the national narrative going on right now on TV, on Twitter, is that the Thunder were huge winners today, just so you guys know.
Barry, so if the Thunder was huge winners, what's the best case scenario out of this trade for the Thunder?
The best scenario I can see is that the national media is proven to be a fraud. The same guys that said Russell Westbrook's not a point guard and all kinds of other nonsense. I don't know. Maybe here's the best.
Sam Presti's the one that made this deal, and I mean we've all seen he usually strikes right on deals.
Well, sometimes he does. Most of the times he does. But here's why. Here's the best case scenario. Enes Kanter gets here. He likes it. They sign him up. He signs an extension. Steven Adams develops. Steven Adams overnight went from the Thunder's offensive center to the Thunder's defensive center. He lives up to that new title. He plays excellent post defense. Enes Kanter comes in and gives the Thunder some low post scoring and some offensive scoring from the center position that it hasn't had even with Adams. And the Thunder's much better inside. And somewhere in the future, a backup point guard emerges, and the Thunder's happy as larks. That's the best. That's the best scenario.
Okay, I'm going to flip to Anthony. Anthony, what's the worst case scenario?
Kanter comes in and struggles. Adams struggles to get back from his injury. Defensively, they really struggle down the stretch. DJ Augustine's not the answer. Kyle Singler proves not to be Defensive Player of the Year. Kyle Singler. And this team matches up with Memphis in maybe they get up to 7, or maybe Memphis jumps the Warriors 1-8, and you face Memphis in the first round, a series you'd really want, Kendrick Perkins. But I mean, we all have to remember within all this, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook are still here, and Serge Ibaka. So this is still a title contender. It was yesterday. It is today.
Sorry, Anthony sprung that. No, what I was going to say though was, I can't remember what game it was earlier this year. Obviously, a lot of injuries happening, and there've been these games from time to time with the Thunder when they've been maybe a man down or different scenarios when it becomes a layup drill. I think it was the New Orleans game, the first game against the Pelicans down in New Orleans, and it was a conga line to the basket, and I just worry that they're setting up to have a conga line begin with some of these teams are going to play. Yeah, the Warriors can hit it from outside, but if you can drive down Main Street and get a layup, is the Thunder going to be able to match up to ultimately outscore them if they're getting that many easy baskets? I mean, that to me is a real issue if you're thinking. We've seen some of these defensive deficiencies before. Are they going to start to creep up even more? And the answer isn't getting healthy. The answer is gone, or what you thought was the answer isn't gonna live up to what you hoped for. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I hope the national media is right, but like Barry said, they thought there was a big old rift between Westbrook and Durant and said, Westbrook wasn't very good, and so I don't know. Should we believe that? I think it might be sketchy.
Darnell just reported Tibor Place, the rights to Tibor Place was also sent away in this deal. Just the Tibor Place era is over. It was a great one.
What's next? Alex Abrinas? The world is coming to an end.
Guys, finally, what's your best question for Sam Presti? Conceivably, you'll get a chance to ask one of those. Walk across the street here in a few minutes and talk to Sam after these big trade deadlines. My question is, where does this miscalculation of Reggie Jackson rank in your biggest regrets? It's clear Carlson said it today in the Oklahoman that Sam badly misjudged, and it seems like that's what really cost him. Maybe this is the best case scenario out of action. What's your question for Sam?
I think that is a good one because, if you traded Jackson at, maybe before this season when his stock was about as high as it's been, especially after that playoffs last year, you could have got this and probably more for just Jackson, basically. I guess you got to match contracts and different things like that. That's been the biggest reason why Perk was in this deal, was contract-wise. But that's a good one. How worried is he about taking Kendrick Perkins away from this locker room? Because more than his defensive presence, I think, you lose just an absolute locker room leader that both superstars love. Well, Reggie Jackson was kind of wearing on him. They're going to be stung a little bit by this Perkins loss.
That's a great point, Anthony. Sort of the counselor, the sounding board. I think I think there's even been some comments made out there over the years that, and Durant even, I think during his MVP speech mentioned this, that late night conversations with Perk, late night texts with Perk, being a voice of reason, a guy that they really trusted, and I think that ran throughout that locker room. So it's going to be interesting to see. Does that guy emerge in someone else that's there? This becomes a much younger locker room suddenly with Kendrick Perkins gone. So, but I turn back to your original point, the question for Sam Presti. I would lead back to that. What made you think that this Reggie deal could get done, or that Reggie could be kept long term? Did you read him wrong? Were you led wrong? Did his people say something that led you wrong? Because even 24 hours ago, or maybe 30 hours ago, I think a lot of us felt like this trade deadline might be pretty quiet for the Thunder, and then we find out that Reggie Jackson is asked to be traded, and suddenly we know that something's got to happen because the Thunder's not going to let him go for nothing. So, to me, that's a real interesting sort of inside the head of Sam Presti. What happened? Did something happen specifically, or did he just get a bad read on this guy who he clearly loved a lot out of Boston College, thought he could be a guy they'd have around for a long time?
Hey, Barry, what do you want to ask Sam?
I'd ask Sam if if Singler and Kanter, if they're, well, I want to know that. Here's what I really want to know. Is Kanter, in their mind, a short-term guy, or is that somebody they think they can keep? And to me, like I said, short-term, I think this is not good at all. I don't, I'm less confident of the NBA Finals for the Thunder than ever before this season. But long-term, they think they can keep Kanter, and with that, there's a Kanter-Adams, duo rotation. Is that manageable? Kanter just came from Salt Lake, where he didn't like sharing time with Rudy Gobert and Derek Favors. So is he going to like coming to Oklahoma City and sharing time? I don't understand. If it's a short-term thing, I don't buy it as a short-term fix either.
Anthony, I'm going to let you have the last word because you said one of the most important things. You said the Oklahoma City Thunder is a title contender. Do you still think that, or is that just a slip of the tongue?
No, I definitely think they're a title contender now, and they were a title contender yesterday. I mean, they still have Durant and Westbrook. If Durant and Westbrook go off in a series where you still have good pieces behind them, which is Ibaka as a defender, if he can step his game up a little bit. Adams is coming along. I definitely still think. Does anyone on this panel not think they're a title contender? I'm not saying favorite. I'm just saying contender.
Anthony, what you said is right. I think they've got the pieces to beat anybody in the West. Now the road is tough because you're probably going to be, on the road. Yeah, you're going to be not only the underdog but on the road. I think in every series. So the road is long, but can they beat any of them in a series? I think so. We
see how Russell Westbrook's been playing lately, and if Kevin Durant's healthy, he's been going off lately too. I don't see how you can say this team is not a contender.
Barry,
I give the
contender
Thunder
or non-contender?
Well, is 3.75% chance? Is that a contender?
This guy's got his calculator out. Hey, what did this deal do to the calculator? Did it send it from 5.7% to 3.7%?
Well, here's the deal.
I was told there'd be no math.
If you're 50-50 in every series you play, which if you're not at home court, that's about the best you can hope for.
It's true.
Your odds of winning the title are 6.25%. So. I'm going to put the Thunder a little bit under 50% if they play the Warriors, which I think they will. So we're talking in the 3 to 4% range, without even really, discussing too much about what this trade does. So,
what would you say this trade does then? Obviously
I think it hurts them. I don't think you can navigate the West without Perkins or somebody like him. And the key to this trade is probably Steven Adams. Not Enes Kanter. It's Steven Adams. If Steven Adams can play, say, like he has at times, not often, but at times, and play like he did against the Clippers out in Game 5 in L.A. and in Memphis series, he really came on. They discussed. If he can play like that, I can sort of live without Kendrick Perkins. But if he's still developing, they're not surviving the West without Perkins.
Well, if Steven Adams is the key, the key that's 1A or 1B or whatever that be is Serge Ibaka in my mind, guys. Because the more we've seen Serge pull away from the basket, the less defensive minded he's been. If he can get back to that weak side defense, blocking the shots, really affecting things in the paint, I think he's got to be more defensive minded than we've seen him all year. I think that's got to become a much bigger part of his game. Even if Steven Adams has become that player in the middle, I think they still need more from Serge Ibaka if they want to have a good solid chance to get through a playoff series at all.
Thanks, guys. That's all for this edition of Thunder Thursdays on News OK Live. But you can stay with the best coverage team anywhere, every day at News OK, and every morning in the Oklahoman.